I'm Josh Keegan, and welcome to this episode of the Space Down Under live. In this live stream, we will be talking all about Mars. I will be speaking with Jon Clarke, the president of the Mars Society in Australia, in just a few moments. We have our very own Mars Society, unique to Australia, and it's linked to the larger Mars Society, a part of a worldwide group of associations, all founded by Robert Zubrin in 1997. The Mars Society has links to almost every space agency in the world and boasts one of the most iconic members, Elon Musk. So much has been happening on Mars as well, since the Perseverance Rover especially landed in February of this year. Jon and I will be talking in just a second about what's been happening with the rovers on the Red Planet. And these rovers include, there are three: the Perseverance, the Ingenuity, and the Zhurong. Probably said that wrong. We'll also be talking about the future of the rovers and what that may mean for future missions. Just as a reminder, there'll be a question and answers towards the end of this live stream where you can get to ask your questions. So just give me a second here. Welcome, Jon. Thanks very much for joining me live to discuss what is your favorite topic for both you and me, Mars.
Mars, indeed. It's good to be here with you.
Yeah, thanks very much for joining me. And thanks very much for persevering through those few technical issues you had at the beginning. Jon actually had one or two issues actually using his computer, getting online. And at the moment, still in the background, I have a police chopper flying around. So this is going to be very entertaining despite the least. So, all right. Let's first talk about the Perseverance Rover. The Perseverance Rover, this actually happened in February 2020, and I'll go to now the landing of that particular mission.
We are starting the straighten up and fly right maneuver, where the spacecraft will jettison the entry balance masses in preparation for parachute deploy and to roll over to give the radar a better look at the ground.
Chute deployed.
The navigation has confirmed that the parachute has deployed, and we are seeing significant deceleration in the velocity. Our current velocity is 430 meters per second at an altitude of about 12 kilometers from the surface of Mars.
Heat shield set.
Perseverance is now slowed to subsonic speeds, and the heat shield has been separated. This allows both the radar and the cameras to get their first look at the surface. Current velocity is 145 meters per second at an altitude of about 9.5 kilometers above the surface.
Nav filter converged. Velocity solution 3.3 meters per second. Altitude 7.4 kilometers.
Now has radar lock on the ground. Current velocity is about 100 meters per second, 6.6 kilometers above the surface of Mars. Perseverance is continuing to descend on the parachute. We are coming up on the initialization of terrain relative navigation and subsequently the priming of the landing engines. Our current velocity is about 90 meters per second at an altitude of 4.2 kilometers.
OVS valid.
We have confirmation that the lander vision system has produced a valid solution and part of terrain relative navigation.
Priming. TBA is nominal.
We have priming of the landing engines.
Back shell set.
Current velocity is 83 meters per second at about 2.6 kilometers from the surface of Mars. We have confirmation that the back shell has separated. We are currently performing the divert maneuver. Current velocity is about 75 meters per second at an altitude of about a kilometer off the surface of Mars.
Here on safety Bravo.
We have completed our terrain relative navigation. Current speed is about 30 meters per second, altitude of about 300 meters off the surface of Mars. We have started our constant velocity accordion, which means we are conducting the sky crane, about to conduct the sky crane maneuver. Sky crane maneuver has started, about 20 meters off the surface.
We're getting signals from MRO.
Tango Delta.
Touchdown confirmed. Perseverance safely on the surface of Mars, ready to begin seeking the sands of past life.
Sorry. I realised I'd muted myself and forgot to unmute. This is live, so I'm bound to make some sort of mistake. So, how many times have you watched that that landing yourself, mate?
Oh, certainly 3 or 4, and it always never fails to excite and move me as I watch it. And you know, the other landings like Curiosity a few years ago and Zhurong, which you can also find on the internet. It's just amazing stuff.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? I mean, obviously, did you get excited as what I did? Like every single time I see that, I get a small thrill about, you know, it coming down, and it's just like like I get chills up and down my spine every time that happens, and watching that, and it's still the same as when the first time I ever saw it. So does that happen with you as well?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you're sitting there, you know it's going to work out all right, but you still feel the tension. And I remember I cheered very loudly in my living room when I was watching it live.
Yeah, I didn't actually get a chance to watch it live myself. It was the middle of the night for me. I did watch it live. Actually, I apologize. I did watch it live, but everyone was asleep, so I had to cheer very, very, very quietly myself. So, just to let everyone know, the Mars 2020 mission is to seek signs of ancient life and collect samples of rock and regolith for possible return to Earth from the Zhurong crater. It was launched on the 30th of July in 2020. And the Mars 2020 mission took 8 months to actually travel to the Red Planet. On the 18th of February 2021, the Mars 2020 mission began its descent towards the Red Planet. And that's the video you actually saw, was the images that were taken as Perseverance Rover was descending to the surface of Mars. The video had actually been synced with the audio from the control room, as the video was not in real time due to the distances involved, and it gives a more real-time view of the events as they happened. So what were you most excited about for the Perseverance Rover mission? What excites you the most about this?
Well, I think there's a number of things I find really interesting and exciting about it. I mean, one is the location. Zhurong crater is a largish crater. I think from memory it's about 80 kilometers across. Don't hold me to it, but it's about that size. Might be a bit smaller than that. But feeding into it is this delta, where an ancient river flowed into the crater, which had a lake in it at that stage, and built up this fan-shaped delta deposit. And I've worked on many ancient deltas on Earth, in Utah, here in Australia, as a geologist, and they are fantastic records of ancient environments in terms of aquatic environments, fluvial environments, and from that indirectly how they contain information about the climate and the weather and all sorts of processes going on. And of course, they're also on Earth great places to trap and preserve organic matter. So if you are a coal geologist or an oil geologist, or you're looking for gas, you will often look at ancient delta deposits, because these sediments preserve organic matter. And the reason the rover is there is so it can visit these locations, which hopefully on Mars, if there was any organic matter to trap and preserve, has also trapped and preserved it there and sample it for return to Earth. So they're the two biggest things, the location itself and the fact that there's finally a mission to actually collect samples from Mars and bring them back to Earth, which is something that has really been the highest priority of Mars researchers for the past 50 years.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, so that was actually the Perseverance rover was lowered to the Martian surface by a sky crane, as we saw. And just to give everyone an idea of exactly how big this thing is huge. It's actually it weighs about 1,025 sorry, excuse me, 1,025 kilos. It's about 3 meters in length, and it's about 2.7 meters wide, and its height is 2.2 meters. It is actually powered by nuclear energy, and so it has a half-life of around about 5,000 years, but the battery is expected to run out well before then. So yeah, and in those deltas that I was having a look at there before. So yeah, with that delta that's there, what are the chances we'll find anything? I mean, we've already had a bit of it's actually gone through and taken a sample of the surface already, but the percussion that it was doing actually destroyed the sample, they believe, because they've had a look around for it. So what do you think it would be the most exciting thing to find in that river delta where the Percy is now?
Well, ideally, perhaps the most exciting, not necessarily the most interesting, because it's all interesting.
Yep.
Most exciting would if it came back with organic matter in it that would be had clear evidence that it was derived from ancient Martian organisms. That's probably the most exciting result that we could find. I think it's important to remember that whatever answer we get from searching for life on Mars is equally important. You know, it's very important if we find, there's lots of implications, if we find evidence of past life on Mars, but it's also important, equally important, if we find no evidence of past life on Mars. If there was life on Mars at one stage, then life is probably common throughout the universe.
Yeah.
If we don't find evidence of past life on Mars, then it's more likely that life is much more rare than some people have imagined. So it's equally significant.
Yeah, you make a very valid point. You make a very valid point that we could actually be, statistically the only ones out there, which is sad. But but it also we should start to value life on this planet a little bit better, because we might be unique to ourselves. Just to give a little bit of statistics about the drill hole that you can see there on screen in the robotic arm. So the robotic arm that's taking some of the samples there is around about 2.1 meters long. So it's not exactly very, very small. Yes, I am reading statistics just in case anybody wants to pick up on that. Yeah, so with all this is it has 5 degrees of freedom. It's made possible by tiny motors or rotary actuators. The freedom node is the shoulder azimuth joint and the shoulder elbow joint, the elbow joint and the wrist joint. So the turret joint at the end there. Yeah, exactly. That's it. So it can actually do a lot of that, rightly so. Some of the tools that it actually has on the end of the turret are the Sherlock, the Watson, the Pixel, the GDRT, which is a gaseous dust removal tool. I knew I'd get that right. Sorry, I try that again. Gaseous dust removal tool, the ground contact center, and of course the drill. The drill is actually a rotary percussive drill designed to extract the rock core samples from the surface of Mars. And believe it or not, that main hole there that you can see, that there's a little tiny picture of that on the screen, that's only 27 millimeters wide, or just 1 inch. So it's not a very big hole that they've made in the Martian surface at all. So yeah, I just think this is very, very interesting that they're able to get this out. So just a question in regard to all this: when do you think they'll be able to return the samples to Earth? Do you know of any plans that are upcoming in regard to when the sample return will be able to come back?
Yes, contracts have been released for the next stages.
Yep.
I mean, people have been talking about this. It's a bit of a backtrack, and people have been talking about this since the early 70s.
Yeah.
And everyone knew it's going to be incredibly expensive, insanely complex, and massive project, and so extremely expensive. And the cost and the complexity of doing it all in one hit has always been prohibitive. So what the decisions that NASA has made was say, well, look, we'll split it into more manageable chunks. The end result might be more expensive, but each individual chunk will be more affordable. We will sell each component as we go. So we've now got the rover on Mars, trying to collect samples. The contracts have been released to build the next stage, which is the lander that'll carry a European-built fetch rover, and ESA has already put out contracts for it.
Oh, right.
And this will actually pick up the cores in their tubes that the rover is going to be leaving on the surface, and take them back to a small rocket that will carry them into Mars orbit. And the next stage will be, and again, I'm reasonably certain the European Space Agency has already started doing the contracts for that, which will collect them in Mars orbit and then bring them back to Earth.
That's insane. They're actually going to land a rocket on Mars. I mean, look, you know, we look across at Boca Chica, Texas, and we see Elon, who's building something that's massive. I can't even Starliner. I can't remember what it's called. Starship. Sorry, Starship. But yeah, so there are other plans already going ahead by the European Space Agency to put a small rocket on there to deliver the payload sample back to Earth. That's insane. That's awesome. Yeah, and that's the thing is that NASA is able to do more and more and more with this simply because they've actually had the confidence about it all. Which actually brings me to my next point. So just to give everybody an idea again, the Perseverance Rover has actually travelled a fair way at the moment. And as you can see by the second blue dot that's there, that's not linked to the first one, is the Ingenuity helicopter drone, which is the bit I want to talk about next. So...
Off she goes. So how cool was that? Have you muted yourself, Josh? I can't hear you at this end.
Oh dear, can't hear me. Even better, I'll do that again. Oh, this is live after all, so you guys get to see the unprofessionalism that is me. All right, so sorry about that. I'll just say that again. Yeah, so basically this is. Can you hear me now? Just give me a nod, mate. Yeah. Whew. All right, so yeah, look, that just it makes me. I'll go back to what I was saying before. It makes me very, very happy and very, very proud that this is a drone that's able to fly on another planet. Look, I had a few things to do with drones a couple of years ago, and yeah, with that, we looked at CASA and all that sort of stuff, and international and regulations and all that sort of stuff. It is beyond visual line of sight. This is way beyond visual line of sight and complete autonomy, because we had a communications delay of anywhere up to 16 minutes one way and up to 32 minutes at the longest distance from Mars. So yeah, this is just insane. To give people an idea, just before you get to respond there, John, this thing is about the size of a tissue box. So it's not very big at all. The blades there are 1.2 meters in length. It's got its own, and it weighs 1.8 kilos. On Mars, it's only 680 grams. The RPMs are around about 2,537 revolutions per minute. Maximum altitude is 5 meters or 16 feet, and the range is around about 300 meters or 984 feet. And the flight duration is only 90 seconds. To give you an idea, just by comparison, the DJI drone you can see there in the corner, that's a Mavic Pro 2, sorry. Its weight is much lighter. It's 907 grams, around about 2 pounds. The RPMs are around about 960. The altitude can go up to 6,000 meters maximum, or around about 19,000 feet. The range is 18 odd kilometers or 11.18 miles, and the flight duration is 31 minutes. So by comparison, it's a massive, massive difference. So, John, in regard to that, are you really surprised that this has worked as well as it has?
Well, it's it's always comforting to see a theory borne out by actual success.
Yes.
We've known for a long time. People have done the maths and the engineering that a helicopter was theoretically possible on Mars. But it's good to see one actually working. I mean, helicopters on Earth are crazy enough, and to have a helicopter on Mars is just even more crazy. But look, this is just the beginning. It was an engineering test. The idea was it would only do 5 flights to test it out. Even one successful flight would have been a win. And now, of course, since it's completed its test program, then it's now being used to scout out the path for the rover to find out, the best way around dunes and so on. Because the best satellite imagery we have from the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter, we can't see anything less than about 30 centimeters, a foot for those who don't understand SI units, 30 centimeters across. And in fact, all that is a single pixel. So we can't actually see anything an object less than a meter across. Whereas the cameras on Ingenuity, you can see things that are only centimeters across. So you can actually avoid obstacles like large rocks or small sand dunes that the rover might get bogged in, which would be really embarrassing to bog a $1 billion rover before it's gone very far. And,
you don't want that on your resume.
That's right. And it's just complementary. You've got the satellite up above giving the tremendous overview. You've got the rover on the ground with its own view of the where they want it to go. And then in between that, filling in the gaps, you've got the drone which takes both vertical views of the path beneath it and it's used to navigate, and also an oblique camera that looks ahead and gets a view like you'd have from a low-flying helicopter or drone on Earth. So it's potentially a very, very powerful tool, certainly for reconnaissance, and they may well make some point out targets of interest that they can take the rover to as we get closer to the edge of that fossil delta.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing, is that it's far exceeded its initial parameters. It was literally to see whether or not it would work first off, and now it's actually exceeding those parameters. So on the screen I've put up for everybody who's watching this, there's a bit of a flight log of exactly how many flights they've done. They're up to a grand total of 12, and in the preparation for this and making sure that everything was in line for today, I was really hoping that because it's Saturday here, it's Friday in the United States. NASA works Monday to Friday generally, and they monitor the rovers over the weekend. I was really hoping they weren't going to go for flight 13 today, because otherwise that would have been a mad scramble for me to try and get that information for this live stream. So yeah, I'm kind of really glad they didn't do that. Again, coming back to it as well, the Ingenuity helicopter drone has moved far beyond Perseverance Rover. It is, as you can see by this graphic here, it is way in front of the of Percy, and so therefore, as John has already said and alluded to, that yes, they can go along and spot any particular hazards that might be upcoming that worthwhile navigating around. Believe it or not, that police helicopter is still there. I can hear it. It just flew over the house. God. Anyway, live, folks, live. Anyway, all right, moving right along. So we get into the next one, which is the most important one, and we don't find out much about this, but however, I have managed to find out some information. And is it the Zhurong rover?
Zhurong, yeah.
Zhurong? Okay, all right.
Z8 to the J sound in Chinese.
Okay, all right, cool. And this, very, very similar, the Chinese National Space Agency also landed their very, very own Martian rover. Okay, so Zhurong was launched on the 23rd of July and was successfully inserted into Martian orbit on the 10th of February 2021. The video was actually part of the soft landing that happened on Mars on the 14th of May 2021, making China the second country to successfully soft land on Mars. Now, the China National Space Agency has been very quiet on the rover. And are you able to share some of the main aims of the mission there, John, that you know about?
We know quite a lot about Zhurong. We know its size. We know it's a lot about how it operates. It's primarily intended to be a geophysical survey. I mean, very wisely, they've chosen somewhere very straightforward to land. It's one of the flattest areas on Mars. When it comes to site selections, the engineers always win. You're going to land somewhere boring. And that's why rovers are good, because you can then drive them to somewhere interesting.
Yep.
So the idea of Zhurong is it'll primarily cover quite significant distances. It's moving at about a bit over 10 meters a day, which is it's the fastest average movement of any rover on Mars. Usually they only move about 5 or 6 meters a day. This one's going over 10, and that's the average of over for 3 months since it's landed, which is impressive. It's got a ground penetrating radar. If you look at the image there, you've got those two little wires sticking out the front.
Yeah.
They're part of the ground penetrating radar.
All right.
And you also see the two little boxes on the front there against the gold background. They're also part of the radar system. It's actually 2 radars, 2 different frequencies. No data has been released on that, which isn't surprising, because it takes a lot of processing to turn the tea leaves that you get from a ground penetrating radar, and I've worked with ground penetrating radars, to turn them into something that you can actually understand. The Chinese have a lot of experience with ground penetrating radar off Earth. Their 2 lunar rovers had GPR, as did the sample return lander, Zhangyi 5, and U-2-1 and U-2-2 rovers. So these are basically the same sort of radar, but now on Mars, and it should be able to see down several hundred meters and detect layering in whatever material makes up these plains, and also whether or not there's any ice there. And there's some of the instruments. You see there's a camera head, like on the US rovers, like on the European ExoMars, stereo color camera. There's also a single lens hyperspectral camera, which looks in the infrared wavelengths. The magnetometer is sort of coiled around that mast, a bit like a snake. There's a laser there that it's called a laser ablation spectrometer. A laser-induced breakdown spectrometer, LIBS. It fires a tiny laser pulse which vaporizes perhaps a millimeter square of the Martian surface. And then the camera reads the spectrum, and it can work out the elemental composition. Curiosity has one. Perseverance has one. It's great because you don't have to drive up to a rock. You can zap things from about 10 meters away. And it's really sort of shoot and scoot. And so they can get analyses very quickly rather than spending hours or days integrating the data from one spot. What else is on there? There's a set of weather sensors. So they're the main instruments. They'll also be getting some engineering data on how slippery the surface is by comparing distance traveled versus number of wheel spins that's happened there. So everything seems to be going really well. It's proceeding at a good track. They're heading south of where they are, considerable distance, over 20 kilometers. There's clusters of small hills, only a few hundred meters across, perhaps a few tens of meters high, with craters on the top of them. What are they? We don't know. They could be little cinder cones. They could be what we call rootless cones, which when a lava flows across a wet surface, you get steam being generated, and the steam blasts its way through the lava flow, and you get a tiny little volcanic cone. Could be one of those.
Wow.
There could be pingos, which are ice-created features, or they could be even mound spring deposits, like we get in Central Australia. We don't know. Hopefully, it'll last long enough, because they're about 5 years driving away at the current rate, to see what they are. There's fault scarps and fault troughs, and there's some small mesas down there as well. But the real as I said before, the real interest in this mission is what's happening beneath the Travis, and what they will find there will certainly help us understand much more about the northern plains of Mars, which are about a quarter of the surface, perhaps an ancient sea bottom.
The interesting part of this is that it's travelled all that distance, and basically it's China's first interplanetary mission to Mars, and it's interplanetary survey. Sorry, it's collected so far over 420 gigabytes of data from both the rover and the orbiter, including visuals of land features, analysis of soil samples, and readings of the atmosphere on Mars. And starting in mid-September, the sun will go between Mars and Earth, and that's when the two planets will be the farthest apart. Radiation from the sun will affect radio communications for both the rover and the orbiter. So we may not be able to send or receive signals from the Zhurong rover. So the other thing is that nicely enough, as I found out over the last 24, 48 hours, is the mission has reached all its necessary parameters over the last 90 days, and it's now being extended. So it's now into, it was mainly for China, the Chinese National Space Agency. They were to just test to see whether or not they could do all of these things, collect some really awesome insights into the red planet, and then basically after that they were looking at possibly extending the mission should everything be successful. The other thing you mentioned once before, and I took note of, is that the solar panels on the Zhurong, sorry, I'm going to get it wrong again, Zhurong actually shiver, and that's to do what exactly?
Well, that's to shake the dust off. I mean, when you look at solar-powered missions, previous ones and even ongoing ones, one of the concern has been when too much dust accumulates on the surface, of course, they receive less sunlight. And because rovers are quite restricted in size, and they use a lot of power to move, this can have a big impact on their mobility. And what the engineers Zhurong have done, they're actually, apparently, they haven't demonstrated this yet on Mars, but in principle, they can actually tilt the panels up to some extent and then vibrate them. They're a bit like a beetle shaking its wing covers, and the dust will slide off. And we know that the dust is very mobile.
Yep.
We've seen this on some of the Spirit and Opportunity rovers, that when they drive on a slope, the dust slides off the solar panels very easily. So very, very nifty. And,
that's amazing. I mean, and we don't want to repeat Opportunity Rover happening all over again. Rest in peace, Oppie. So yeah, it's always a good thing to have that sort of technology there. The other thing is just for anybody who's wants to know exactly where Zhurong and everything is. So the two red boxes on this graphic here is the landing sites they were considering to begin with, and as you can see on this particular graphic, everything is in relation to everything else. So we've got the Curiosity rover on there, we've got the Opportunity rover, we've got the Viking missions as well, Viking 1 and 2. So this just gives people just a general idea of exactly where everything is placed. To let you know as well, and correct me if I'm wrong please, John, is that they landed in the same crater as the Viking mission, is that right?
No, they're nowhere near it.
Oh, I'm wrong.
That's all right. That's all right. The two closest missions to it are the Viking 2, which is lander, which is what, 1,000, something like 1,000 and something kilometers away, and then the InSight lander, which is still working. This is a stationary geophysical observatory, and that's again a bit over 1,000 kilometers away as well. So
close on a map, but not close at all.
Yes. This is the thing, Mars is a much smaller planet than Earth, but because it doesn't have oceans, the accessible surface area is the same as the land area of Earth.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. All right.
So yeah, Valles Marineris, which you can see there on the screen, if you imagine the eastern end being Perth, the western end being Perth, the eastern end is Auckland. So that gives you a sense of scale.
That gives you an idea of size. Yeah, that's awesome. All right. So yeah, so this basically brings me to the next part, which is the future of robotic exploration on other planets. Now I'm going to go through a couple of different things, simply because it's becoming more and more realistic now. As this new future mission that NASA has announced, and that is a mission to Titan, and that involves a new kind of rover, which is based off the Integrity rover, which has proved itself over 12 flights. Now we'll get to talk about this one. It's called Dragonfly. Okay, that's the Dragonfly mission. So the Dragonfly is set to launch in 2026 and will arrive in 2034. The rotorcraft, will fly to dozens of promising locations in Titan, looking through prebiotic chemical processes common to both Titan and Earth. This Dragonfly will mark the first time NASA will fly a multi-rotor vehicle for science on another planet. It has 8 rotors and flies like a large drone, as you saw, and it will take advantage of Titan's dense atmosphere, which is 4 times denser than Earth's, to become the first vehicle to ever fly its entire science payload to new places for repeatable and targeted access to surface materials. So the lander will actually fly more than 108 miles or 175 kilometers, nearly double the distance it's traveled, all the distance traveled to date by all the Mars rovers combined. So the Dragonfly. Let's just pause for a moment. The Dragonfly. That's just nuts. Sorry, I'm just going to go mental here. The more I looked into it, the more I just went, this is nuts.
Yeah, it really looks like something out of a movie in terms of its concept, and it's incredibly bold, and it's something you could only really do on Titan. I mean, Titan is probably the best place to fly in the solar system. I mean, the gravity is about 1/10 of Earth's, but the atmosphere is, as you said, it's something like 4 times as dense. So
it's almost like it'd be flying / swimming.
Yeah, it's extraordinary. And it's powered by a nuclear isotope generator, which doesn't produce that much power, so that'll sort of trickle charge batteries. It'll run off batteries and then land and recharge them and keep on going. In principle, it could be flying for years. I mean, when you talked about Zhurong, they said 90 days, but engineers always set the bar very, very low, so that it works for more than 90 days. Hooray! Aren't we wonderful? And JPL did the same. I mean, the Spirit Opportunity rovers, they were 90 days as well, and privately they were going to say, well, if it got off the landing platform and they took a few photos, they drove 10 meters, that's a win. And so when they're saying they're going to what was it, over 100 kilometers?
Yeah, 175 kilometers.
They're actually setting the bar low, what they think it really can do.
Yeah, exactly. It's probably going to be able to do much more than that. And the fascinating thing for me was that, they're going to. Obviously there's confidence now that they've learned their lessons from the Integrity rover, Integrity helicopter drone, drone rover, and they're taking those lessons they've learned and they're applying it to this new mission, which, as far as I'm aware, is still roughly in concept phase. Like the only footage that I got was from NASA, but surprisingly enough, it didn't come with any sound or voiceover or anything like that to talk about it. And it's like I feel like it's almost so new that NASA doesn't quite know what to do with it yet. It's just the more I dug into it, the more I realized that this is I suppose it's like the Integrity. It seems insane until they do it. So And that brings me to the next one, which is now this is only a concept, and yeah, we're just geeking. I'm just geeking out because I can. It's my channel, and this is something I stumbled across, which is the Havoc mission. And what I'll do is I'll just play this one and just let it self-explain. So that's Havoc. It's actually to send people to Venus. I know it is way outside your zone of being Mars and the Mars Society of Australia, but yeah, just to consider this for a second, Venus is a planet with a runaway greenhouse effect with a surface temperature and a pressure of around about 737 Kelvin or 464 degrees Celsius or 867 degrees Fahrenheit and 92 bar worth of atmospheric pressure, respectively. The conventional engines, rocket engines, may not work at those particular pressures, and hence human missions to Venus have historically been, thought of impractical, if not impossible. And Venus, they're trying to sell this as Venus has advantages for crew travel, such as being closer than Mars. It has an Earth-like gravity of 0.904 of a G and an atmospheric pressure that provides level protection from solar and interstellar radiation. What do you think about that?
Well, I mean, how crazy is it? The idea of inflating an airship as you parachute down. And yeah, I'm not sure if I'd like to volunteer for that. I mean,
Yeah, me either. But I mean, look, the visual representation was certainly very
Yeah.
interesting, and
Mm,
as far as I can tell, it's actually up for discussion. That's hence the video. But
mm,
it's just nice to see that the potential possibilities that NASA and or even commercial space partners could possibly
yeah.
bring to the future of space exploration and our own solar system is
Mm,
exciting. So yeah,
yeah. I think there's the reason why they're going down that route, having a balloon or an airship, is that although the surface, as you said, is insanely hot and at very high pressures, there is a zone in the atmosphere of Venus where
yep,
conditions are Earth-like. The temperatures are not extreme, the pressures are not extreme, and you obviously would need oxygen and pressurization, but it could quite be comfortable because uh, the one thing that would justify doing this is if we could develop robotic machines, rovers,
yep,
that could operate under them at Venus surface conditions, and then the crew in the airship would be able to control these remotely on the surface in real time. Now, building something that'll survive, electronics that'll work at what was it, 500 degrees almost, and pressures equivalent to almost a kilometer down in the ocean.
yep.
It's just a trifle fantastic. But if we could do that, that would be great. That would be a justification for putting people into the atmosphere of Venus. You could also do it in orbit around Venus, but then of course you'd have relatively high levels of cosmic radiation being close to solar radiation being closer to the sun and issues there. But yeah. I think we need to learn a lot more about conditions in the Venus atmosphere and build these slightly fantastic robots before it becomes viable. But it's
Yep.
certainly a great idea.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? And I certainly encourage the people who put it together as well, because that's for me looking around at this sort of stuff. Like, what's next after
Mm,
the Perseverance rover and the Ingenuity
mm,
rover, and even trying to find out what China is going to be doing next.
mm,
I've stumbled across a few fantastic ideas, including one where we could possibly use balloons to explore the upper levels of reaches of Jupiter, and
mm,
I'm just not sure how that would work. But when I started exploring, there was all sorts of proposals and ideas and
mm,
speculation and all that sort of stuff. And I just think it's really, really wonderful that people are actually doing that right now, like speculating about what the future may hold, given that there is exciting things happening right now on Mars with 3 rovers that are just wandering around collecting all the best science and data you could possibly imagine off the of our nearest neighbor, which is, to me, is just amazing and astounding all at the same time. So
mm,
what I'll do now, John, is, if it's okay with you, is I'll just open up and give everybody the opportunity to ask any questions they may have about the discussion John and I have had. We've had a few questions come in on the chat and the discussion that have been here. Let me just have a look. Let me see. A lot of people are saying hello. Where are you from? We're Australian. um, yes, the Perseverance rover, yes, is about the size of a small car, and that's why the landing via that crane was such a spectacular achievement from NASA, all on its own. Just the fact that it actually came out and it worked quite well. Then there are people talking amongst themselves. Oh, yes, and was there a Sci News video that was used for the Zhurong landing? Yes, that was. Just remember that all the videos that I've used, I had to obtain from the internet, mainly from NASA, mainly from the China National Space Agency, and one from Sci News. That was the other one as well. So if there's any other questions that anyone else has, you might as well ask them now. No, I think that's pretty much it. Just give it a few more seconds because this is on delay. It's your opportunity to ask Jonathan Clarke, the president of the Mars Society Australia, any questions you might have, including about joining the Mars Society Australia or even making a donation to. Got one from Corinna Stanley. What about the next rover to be? What's the next rover? What will the next rover be planning to achieve? I don't know.
Okay.
John,
great
any
question.
insights?
The next rover will be launching next year.
Yep.
Let me think. Pardon me.
You're right.
Probably September next year. And it's a European rover, the Rosalind Franklin rover, named after the scientist who did a lot of the fundamental work on the structure of DNA. And
right.
this will be designed specifically to look for organic molecules on Mars. It's
wow.
About the size of Zhurong, not as big as Curiosity or Perseverance, but and it's solar powered. And will have a large drill. Have a drill that can go down certainly 2 meters, possibly 3 meters, and which is very ambitious. It's like the crazy technology of the Perseverance rover's sampling head. What could possibly go wrong? But
yes.
By drilling down into the surface of Mars and then bringing samples back up and analyzing them, you can get fresh. Potentially, or you will get fresh Martian material that has not been weathered, that has not been affected by cosmic radiation, and hopefully pristine organic molecules. And it's got a very nifty chemistry lab on board and other instruments, spectrometers, to really find out what sort of organic chemistry may be present there. So it's launching, as I said, about September next year from Baikonur, a proton rocket. And it'll be landing at a place called Oxyaplanum, from memory, which is it's east of where the Pathfinder rover landed over nearly 30 years ago.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
And it's an old river valley coming down out onto the plain. Not a delta, but perhaps some kind of ancient fan deposit. Very old, because the older the rocks are, the likely are they're going to be organic molecules within the sedimentary rocks. When early Mars was not quite Earth-like, as in modern Earth, but very similar to early Earth. And rocks that are 3.5 to 4 billion years old on Earth have organic molecules in them. So hopefully the ones on Mars will as well.
Yeah, that's the thing, is let's hope that we can actually get some sort of good results to find out whether or not we are definitely alone or not. Equally, as you said at the beginning of this, it would be nice to know whether or not we are alone or we are not. So thanks, Corinna. Thanks very much for asking that question. If there are any others, just let us know. Ask your questions now. We'll give it another few minutes, and you can ask Jonathan Clarke, the president of the Mars Society Australia, is here just to you can ask all the questions you want. He is a nut with Mars. I've asked him. We've had some offline discussions previously about Mars, and yes, a very much earlier video that you'll find on my YouTube channel. Yes, we actually geeked out once before about all this. So. All right, it doesn't look like we're getting any more questions. So that's all right. So we might end up wrapping it up there, John. So look, thanks very much. Unless something comes in, of course, while I'm wrapping up. Okay. So thanks very much for joining me, for coming along to this live presentation. If anybody wants to know more about the Mars Society Australia, or even more information about how to become a member, just remember I've placed links in the description below for everybody to go along and find out. Please go along and join the Mars Society Australia. I have. For myself, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. You know you want to. You can join me for really professional live streams like this one. And yeah, and we can, and obviously I'll see if John has some spare time, maybe next month, and we can possibly look at doing this all over again. So thanks very much for watching, everyone, watching the Space Down Under live, and always, as always, remember, stay caffeinated.
Bye.